Right. So we're back to the old Isle of Wight festivals, eh? I think these were probably the most famous in the UK because they're really the first festivals that charged for entry. Not very much though. 25 shillings is £1 and a little bit, which in those days would probably be about three and a bit dollars for the very first Isle of Wight festival, which is in 1968. It's the one you can't find very much information about. Probably because nothing much happened to it. It was literally the size of a small town fair. Though somebody said there was about 10,000 people went to it, I bet less than 3,000 or 4,000 actually paid tickets for it. Jefferson Airplane were the headline band for that. And that was quite a coup, except the fact that Jefferson Airplane were over in Europe on their first real European tour and were desperate for gigs, I suspect. And there's a little bit of, yeah, we'll come and play there because it's a little bit out of the way, and if anything goes wrong, it'll be fine. Nobody will really complain too much, you know. But they were the headline act. But there were quite a few other bands there that played that became much better known. Ainsley Dunbar, who you can see there, he was drummer for Michael Schenker and UFO in the sort of 80s. I remember him playing with them. Fairport Convention, Richard Thompson is probably the guy you'll know from them. And then The Move, they were a pretty big group in the late 60s, early 70s in the UK.
Where are you showing us England and Bar? Or Ainsley Dunbar. Yeah, okay,
yeah.
got it.
He was quite a famous drummer. It's still kicking around, actually, still playing. He's gone back to a solo, leading his own band again, but he's still about. And then Arthur Brown, he had two massive hits in 1968. So despite the fact that this was a bunch of 22 and 23-year-old guys putting on this festival on an island that you had to get a ferry to, you know, they got some pretty big acts. John Peel, the compere that they've listed there, he was a big star in the kind of underground music movement. He had a radio program on the national radio, BBC, and he was literally left to do what he liked. He could literally make his own playlists, and he did. And he had a huge influence in almost all of these bands that you're seeing on that little flyer there. If John Peel liked you, you were more or less guaranteed a record deal if you didn't have one already. You know, that's literally how it went with that guy. So we're talking about the PA. I suspect this is the PA from the Rolling Stones gig in 1969. I suspect this was the same PA that was at that gig in 1968, even though this is a year later. And the reasons for that is that I know both The Move and Tyrannosaurus Rex owned WEM equipment. And I get the suspicion that I can't find any definite clarification for this, but I get the suspicion that the T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus Rex and The Move pulled their equipment together for the event. That was not uncommon in those days. In fact, this PA here, even though it's a Rolling Stones playing, a lot of that belonged to T-Rex or T-Rex's manager. So, you know, Charlie quite often used to borrow kit back from bands that he'd sold the gear to. The more I read about this stuff is the more that factory down in Oxley Heath must have been an absolute gathering ground of people, you know, who we regard as famous now, but in those days were, you know, just kind of starting up. You know, David Bowie, I know, effectively lived there for quite a bit during the Space Oddity era. And this is what they'd have been using in the very first festival. These are really basic WEM cabinets. These were the 4x10s or 4x12s. No horns, no tweeters, no nothing, just a bunch of basically hi-fi speakers.
Like a vocal master.
Yeah. Hi, Bob.
Hello.
And then, of course, we're back to our friend, the WEM Audio Master. I suspect there's probably only going to be one or maybe at best two of those at the side of the stage when the very, very first one, which is 1968. So this is probably what Jefferson Airplane played through on that particular weekend. And how the heck they managed it, I have no idea. This is a better set of photographs. This is more like what was at the 1969 and the 1970 festival, because the Who's PA was the basis for both of those festivals. And this is what they had. This actual stuff used to belong to Pink Floyd. But that gives you a better idea of what the front of an Audio Master looks like. So the bottom row there, that's the trim controls or the sensitivity. Oh, sorry. Oh, crap. That's basically the gain controls. The black ones were microphone balanced ins. The silver ones were high Z, guitar inputs. And then these were your tone controls here, and that was your level. Now, the Who's ones actually had foldback settings on them, which were an extra little knob that were there and there and there, which you can see on this one. These here were actually foldback monitor pre-fade sends, literally pre-fade, were wired into the same bit of wire that went to that potentiometer there. Absolutely no extra electronics whatsoever. They just literally were wired in there. But this guy, Chris, yeah.
That's a 15 input console right there, the equivalent?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So what you do with these ones, these were the standard Audio Masters. These weren't the modified ones that the Who tended to use. So what you had here was, you see that green jack there?
Yep.
Well, you came out of the one next to it, went into the green one there. You came out the next one there, and you went into the green one there. Now on these ones, ultimately the master is that over there. On these ones, the masters. But later on, they modified it so that when you came out of there, this master still worked, and so did this one, and then so did that one. So you ended up with like effectively a five-way subgroup, if you like, And this is also how they would listen to it at the side stage. So what you've got here is, I think in this one here is a 10-inch speaker, 2 10s and 2 12s. And that literally sat where it's sitting right now, blasting into your face when you were doing the sound. It was probably actually on the ground, but that's basically how they monitored and mixed from the side of the stage. Fearsome, but that's how it was done.
Because they're trying to overcome the spill from the main.
Oh yeah, you can imagine the racket of Keith Moon bashing drums away at you 10 feet away, fairly frightening, and you've got, what's his name, Townsend blasting away in a bunch of 8x10 Marshall with high watt 100 amps slaved together, rammed into it. So yeah, a heck of a noise like at the side of the stage. That's actually the instructions for the WEM. I can't get them any bigger, unfortunately, but I can send copies to that if anybody's interested in it.
Great.
There's a wonderful little article, little line down in here, something about disconnecting all the earths if you're chaining several of them together. Happy days. Yeah. Just to try and stop buzz.
The earths on the tip sleeve.
No, they're at the mains part.
The safety ground.
Yeah, what you would call the safety ground. Yeah. There's a story of Janis Joplin buying some of the later PA and taking it across to New York, and then phoning Charlie, get your butt over here, man. This thing's not working. And all it was the American guys had put all the safety grounds back in, and it was buzzing, quite merrily at 60 hertz, as you can well imagine. Because one thing this kit was not good at is screening. The screening on this stuff was terrible. It was really, really, really bad. You had to be very, very careful how you plugged it up and stuff. Otherwise, yeah.
Were people shocked when they touched?
No, that was one thing about it. He was very careful with the when he made his initial guitar amps. Still in London, there were still some areas of London were powered by DC voltage, coming out the wall sockets.
Wow.
And the earthing was bad with that. And somebody got killed at one point with a guitar amp playing in a club in London in Battersea, which was the DC part of London at that time. So he brought all these amps back.
DC was the safe one, though.
Yeah, but if you got a shock, you can still get a shock from DC. And if you do, your hand will spasm and grab on and will not let go.
Huh.
It's actually more dangerous.
Okay. Let's look into that, because Thomas Edison's argument against AC was that it would kill you. And
no, you can get a really, really bad shock from DC.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get either one will kill you.
He had a
either one will kill you really badly.
Yes.
Really quickly. And
Yeah.
This stuff. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this stuff here. This guy Chris Hewitt, this guy here, with the pinkish kind of shirt on, is a massive collector of old Pink Floyd equipment. He has tons of it. In fact, anything from about maybe the late 60s to about 73, 74. He has literally tons of equipment, and he knows how it works, and almost all of what he owns works. So what you have here is probably what ended up getting used in the 1970 Isle of Wight Festival. These Vitavox horns here were just getting developed at that time, and there's an article or a comment that Charlie makes about the first couple of days at the 1970 festival. They were getting nowhere with the sound, and John Thompson, who was his sound engineer, General Dogsbody, whatever, he get dispatched off up to London to bring down some horns, and I think this was the horn that they were using. There's a pretty vague photograph that I think shows at least 3 or 4 of these things lurking in the corner on top of some of the traditional WEM columns.
Last week you had that, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was Watkins?
Charlie Watkins. Watkins Electric Music. Arguably the developer of what we now know as a traditional PA system, i.e. mixer, separate amplifier, speakers. Yeah, you can debate that. Certainly in the UK and Western Europe, he definitely was way ahead of his game with that.
Well, Bob, when the video of last week comes out, you can see that was what Gordon was talking about last week.
Oh, okay. Well, that WEM mixer you just showed from 68, 69 is more, looks like it's a little bit better than the Shure, I guess it was Vocal Master mixer that they used at Woodstock.
M67.
Yeah. The main difference is that the Audio Master is actually got active EQ.
Yes.
It's fully active, that system.
Wow. I mean, that looks almost respectable for that year.
Yeah, it was. It was very advanced. Charlie will never say who was the engineer that developed it. He would never say who it was that actually developed it. I'm still pretty convinced it was somebody from Abbey Road or EMI Studios, as it was at that time, who were very, very protective of their circuits. And I'm still pretty convinced that it was one of them that did it. And the reason for that is that the guy who developed the surround sound that this year was part of for Pink Floyd came out from that background. He was one of Pete West's assistants, and he worked for EMI in the late 60s as an actual builder, and EMI built all their own equipment for the mixers and stuff like that. And I have a sneaking suspicion that was the link, how those things turned out. They actually are very good little mixers. That one there is actually mine. I actually own that one. Though that's not my photograph of it, but I own one identical to that. And it is, what is it now, nearly 50 years old. And that pot there on mine is the only one that crackles, the headphone one. All the rest work, and I've never touched it. So this is what was in that Vitavox, or that horn at the top. That's a Celestian selection, I think. But that's what was in it. That was your horns. That was designed to go across at the
wow.
Isle of Wight 1970. There were something approaching 400,000 people kicking around on that. And you had about 8 of these things, at most. Pretty scary, yeah?
Very.
This was the kind of package that he started to sell immediately after the Isle of Wight Festival. And this is what Pink Floyd toured from 1970. They got the very first ones. Pink Floyd were his biggest customer, bar none. And for 2 years, this was their PA. This was the basis of their PA, various stacks of this. There's 2 2x15s here, 4x10, and then those horns. But they were all powered off the little SL100, a little 100 watt amp per bit there, per section. And that's how it was done. And you know what? As I said last week, it was packaged well. Charlie was amazing to deal with. He was quite a lot older than most of the guys in the bands and stuff, yet he tolerated them. He never talked down to them, and they would always go back to him. And it worked. And then this here was the ultimate WEM PA. This stuff was what the band, I don't know, you guys will know the band Slade, the UK band
Sure.
Slade.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this was their PA. Now, they're not on this stage. They were actually over in America trying to make it in America when this actual event happened. But the reason I brought this picture up, though it's nothing to do with the Isle of Wight, This was the very last festival that Charlie did. There was some pretty ugly scenes at this festival with knife fights and dinners, whatever. Classic Scottish idiots. They get some drink in them and they'll just go for it. But this here was the thing I wanted to show. This is the best picture I've found of this thing. So this was his Meyer sound beam, if you like. There's a 10-inch Goodman's hi-fi speaker in that black dome, and that shoots the high frequency up. I think it was 3K upwards or some out. And that was the ultimate WEM PA. So there's a big sub bins here, which Charlie hated because he couldn't lift them. They were about as big as Charlie was, actually. But these things belong to Slade, and there's basically 4 Celestion 15-inch drivers firing down a 3-inch wide slot there. And those things, there was about 12 of them made, I think. And I know of at least 2 of these are still lurking in a club in Newcastle. And I think they're still working. I bet it's not the original drivers, but I think they're still working. The reason for that is because they actually make the stage.
And so 4 15s in each box?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or 4 12s, I can't remember which. But certainly it's 4, there's 4 drivers in each box firing into a slot. So Tom Danley's got a little bit, he wasn't always right there, you know what I mean? These are just WEM columns up here, just their normal good old WEM columns. And that was it. The bands that played at on this gig were The Move, Jeff Beck was here, Status Quo played here, and a few other Scottish artists that were probably not really known in America at all.
What year was that? There's a bunch of
73. Sorry, Dan. That was 73.
There's a bunch of wedges and what looks like side fills there.
Yeah,
monitoring really advanced in that 4 years.
Yeah, that would be that's right. I said this was a few years after the whole. Hang on, let's get this back up again. Where are you? Stupid thing. I hate computers. I really, really do. So, I mean, yeah, this would be the ultimate kind of WEM. This was his very, very last festival. The man walked away from doing this, literally just after this. He literally walked away from it, shut the factory, just walked away, and just left his shop running, where he went back to doing guitar amps and accordions. Because he'd gotten quite a few bad things had happened, and he was starting to get concerned about the volume and damaging people's hearing. This is 5,000 watt PA. That entire PA's got 5,000 watt on it. You know, I mean, I was on a stage just before Christmas, and there was nearly 10,000 watt on the monitors. You know,
yeah,
the stage was a quarter the size of this. You know, it's unbelievable what they did, isn't it? When you think about it. Yep. And one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit was some of the band lineups. So you know about the Bob Dylan thing with Woodstock, don't you? That the guys Fowlkes and that managed to steal effectively booked Bob Dylan before Woodstock got announced, and he came over and was there instead of doing Woodstock. But some of the other bands that played that particular on that particular 1969 gig were really quite impressive, and a lot of them became quite famous in later days. So you had The Who, you had Bob Dylan, and you had the band as well played. What was really funny, I found I came up with how much it cost them to get the bands to play. And Dylan, with transport for his family and all the rest of it, came to about £35,000. And then the band were £5,000. And then Richie Havens, who at that time was quite a big star, and he was very popular in the UK as well, he was £3,000. And then The Who were £900. So basically, you multiply those figures by 2, and you've roughly got what it was in dollars at that time. You know, and a huge amount of money for 3 20-something-year-olds to have raised, you know, to do an event in 1969. And
don't ask Rick Chin what he thinks about working for The Who.
I've been there. You don't want to ask me either. So people that played in the 1969 one that, you know, weren't in bands that you would recognise by their names now, but you'd Steve Howe from Yes was there, in the band called Gypsy, which was not the American band. It was a band from Cornwall. Who else did you have? You had Marsha Hunt. Now, was Marsha Hunt known in the States, apart from, because she did a lot of musical stuff here. She was famous for being in the Hair musical here, but I don't know if she was ever well known in the States. But,
I'm not familiar with her.
No. She was an American woman. She's a big New York lass, but she was. Joe Cocker played there. I mean, it's just like a lot of it is the actual Woodstock lineup. If you read through some of it, you the Who, you Joe Cocker.
This is 69 or 68
yeah,
that you're talking about?
This is 69 now. I'm talking about 69 now. I can't really get much details about 68 at all that you would know anything. Jefferson Airplane and maybe T-Rex are about the only bands you guys would know from there. The rest of them were all local bands.
Well, you can't really say that they stole Dylan to keep him from playing at Woodstock because you're naming a lot of people who were at Woodstock.
Yeah, I know that. But they somehow managed to book Dylan. I have no idea the whole story there. But Ray Fowkes was 23 years old, you have to remember, when he went across to America and committed a better part of £40,000 to get Dylan and the band over.
They tried to get Dylan to come to Woodstock because he lived in Woodstock, the town, but he chose.
He was actually down in New York, about to go onto QE2, onto the cruise line, the ship, the QE2, to come across to America when Woodstock happened. But his kid got hurt by a sprung cabin door, and he ended up coming off the ship, and then they had to pay another $5,000 to fly him and his family over to New York, over to Isle of Wight.
But the band performed at Woodstock.
Yeah.
So they got back in time.
Yeah, they got back in time. I think they come back with the Who.
Yeah.
It was the Who's PA that did the 1969 gig, and then they did the Who. It was the Who and mostly Pink Floyd's PA that did the 1971, and that was probably literally every Wem cabinet that was in the country. Quite probably, literally every Wem cabinet that was in the country. Now you laugh. But Tony Andrews from Turbo Sound did exactly the same thing for one of the Donington Rock Festivals. He went round everybody that he knew that had bought a Turbo Sound TMS3 or TMS4 in the previous 4 or 5 years and virtually begged everybody to take their kit to this event. I remember that because I ended up being there with a sledgehammer, hammering the stupid wedges in between them to get the angles together. Who else did we have at this event? You had Free, the band Free. That must be one of the very early gigs for them, 1968. You had Fat Mattress. Now, I think I sent you a link about Fat Mattress, which was Noel Redding's band. Now, that band was on the go even when he was supposedly in the Hendrix Experience. So he had that running off and on for quite a few years. I liked them. I thought they were a really good band. I remember them playing. I was actually at the 1969 festival. I remember Dylan playing and stuff like that. I was a little kid at the time, but my cousin was worked for a couple of the record companies that these guys were signed with, and he used to get access to all these events. So him and his girlfriend took me to, we stayed in a small boarding house in Isle of Wight. We were there for quite a long time before the actual event started, and it was great. I enjoyed it. There was a band called Pentangle who were a big band in the UK.
I remember them.
They were in America.
Yeah, well, yeah, they toured a lot. They've only literally just stopped playing very recently. They were a great band. I've done sound for them actually a couple of times when they played up here in one of their later versions. There was amazing the number of people that played in that 1969 festival, yet because Bob Dylan was there, nobody pays much attention to it. And there was no real controversy at the 69 one either. It was near Ryde. It was near one of the main towns. So there was a bit of grief because you think about it, 150,000 people coming over onto the island. That was more than the population of the island was at that time. So, they were running out of things like bread and whatever on the island. It's quite a big island, Isle of Wight. It's not a small place, but it's quite rural, quite countryside. Even to this day, it's still like that. So that's part of the reason why the 1971 started to run into trouble. And what they had to do with it was move it away across to the farming side of the island, which is miles from anywhere. Literally no towns or even anywhere near any of the ferry ports. It was also on a sort of rolling hillside.
Do you have any pictures of that?
Any of the pictures you see in the film will show you it.
Okay.
I have some, but you'll need to bear with me a second to jump out.
Well, no. If Gary's going to show, Gary, were you going to show some of the film?
What?
Were you going to show any of the film today?
the Joni Mitchell film?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask Elliot first.
Well, I'm going to, but so the answer is no.
Right. Okay.
We're not going to see anything today.
But basically, any of the big pictures you see of it will give you a very good idea. If you've seen pictures of Woodstock, the way Woodstock was laid out, it was not unlike that. These smaller events, like the one at the 1969 one, was in a much smaller field. I mean, it must have been absolutely crammed with better part of 100,000 people in it. But if you imagine somewhere where you can just about get a sort of traditional festival-sized field nowadays, the current model of festivals, it was probably a bit like that. Whereas the 1971 was on this, they built an area about the same sort of size, but the unfortunate thing was it was overlooked by hills all the way around it. So they never actually got the full paying audience, although a better part of 500,000 people turned up to see the event. There was probably less than 100,000 in the actual arena that actually paid the tickets. So the Fowkes brothers took an absolute doing money-wise. I suspect they probably still owe the Hendricks estate, for example, for money. You know what I mean? They took an absolute birdbath on that one. And apparently they actually made about £50,000 on the Bob Dylan event, which is pretty good going.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a lot of money in those days, $100,000 and something $1,000, you know, in 69 rather. It was quite a lot of money.
Was that the one where the wind blew the sound?
Yeah, the 1971 was where they run into the sound issues.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I've been reading about a little bit, because I'm sorry I've not got hundreds of pictures for this, but one of the because there's just not any that illustrate the problems properly. One of the things I've been reading about, I often wonder if a lot of the sound complaints they were getting were the people that were outside the fence and up on the hill. You know what I mean?
Complaining they couldn't hear?
Well, yes, and more knowing what Charlie and what John was like, and also what Bob Pridden is like, they'd be wanting that sound to hit those people even if they weren't actually paying guests. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a pretty unsatisfactory sight for the fact that there was wind on it there. It was miles from everywhere. You know, there was literally no towns anywhere near it or anything.
Yeah.
So you'd all these kids running around, wandering around the place, just being menaces, I suspect, as much as anything else. Though, now this is probably a little bit controversial, but I've now read it enough over the last little while. I don't think there was any actual trouble during the festival. A lot of the trouble happened when it was kind of at the beginning, when folk were starting to arrive like 5 or 6 days before the festival was about to start. The festival ran from the Wednesday through to the Sunday. And there was folk trying to get through the fence. There were just nowhere to go. They were dossing out in the farms, you know, sleeping out in the grounds and in the towns and all the rest of it. There was also some story about French anarchists. Now, France at the time was going through a fairly big political upheaval. It was just after Algeria had gained independence, and Morocco was in a similar situation, and there was quite a lot of political unrest in France. And the ferries that go back and forth between Britain and France come into Portsmouth and into Southampton, and that's one of the ways you get onto the island at Isle of Wight. So I think there was a little bit of grief going on there. But again, I don't know how much it actually got to the festival. But ultimately, all that messing around caused the festivals to get banned on the Isle of Wight.
Right.
And that is why it finished. I've read reports from the police constable on the island, the chief constable, the chief of police, and he was reasonably complimentary about the festival in 1970. You know, he didn't really flag up any major complaints, to be honest. So I don't know where a lot of that film, Give Peace a Chance, I suspect was cut quite cleverly to make it look a lot angrier than it actually was. Ray Fowkes is definitely of that opinion. I know that Joni Mitchell got a lot of grief, and that's where I think a lot of the political stuff came in as well. There was guys getting up and giving big political rants about, you know, freedom for this and all the rest of it, because there was quite a bit of political unrest in Europe at that time. You know, you guys were probably concentrating on the Vietnam War more than what was going on over here, but
right.
France was going through a big pile of grief, and Britain was getting a wee bit involved in it as well, you know.
Yeah. Okay, Gordon, I think we got to wrap up soon here.
Yeah, that's all I was just about to say. That's about all I've got to say for this today.
Okay.
Fantastic. Really cool. I went to the Seattle Pop Festival in '69. Followed bands that didn't show up to Woodstock, like the Doors and Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
Yep.
$5. I was 10th, just going into 10th grade.
Cool. Thanks, Gordon. That's really great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Gary?
Did anyone download Luke's Live at Leeds remaster?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he did that?
So my question is, so Luke, did you work from a bootleg CD and then and redo that?
Yeah, so there's, if you want to look, there's extensive notes on the restoration, but yeah, so basically what the whole story is, or a quick five-minute version of the story is, in 1996, a bootleg called Live at Leeds Complete was released, which, as it sounds, had the entire concert, but part of it ran slow, part of it ran fast, the balance was off, there were various glitches and things like that, and of course there were the crackling noises from the original recording. What this is that's used as the basic source for about 98% of the show. Fixed all of those various alignment, balance issues, etc. Removed all of the, or almost all of the crackling noises, as many as I could anyway. And then there were a few kind of missing bits on the bootleg that those were kind of spliced in from official sources, and I used, I think, maybe 3 or 4 different official sources for, this bit of dialogue between, a couple tracks and this bit of applause and things like that. So it's kind of all put together from those various things, but the core source of it is that bootleg from 1996.
Whose is that? Who's showing that screen just now?
Gary is.
Right, because I recognize some of the names on there. Can you back up a couple of bits?
You're muted, Gary. We couldn't hear you.
So this is just scans of all the stuff that came in my original Live at Leeds album.
Oh, right.
Wow.
So,
which if Bill Kirbishley will tell you, he would, I don't know if he still does, but would often get people coming to his office saying, "Hey, I've got all these original contracts, and I think you should pay me something for them." And no, they were just they were all copies.
There's people who've brought them to like Antiques Roadshow or something, thinking they're real, but they were pretty cleverly redone. So. Like this one is just a reproduction, apparently, of Pete's lyrics for some show or something.
That Marquee Club at Wardour Street, that is one of those places that has a reputation miles beyond its actual scale. As a venue, it's tiny. It really is was a tiny little space.
Hey, Gary, if you go down to that the jump photo at the bottom of the screen, so that is actually the 1969 Isle of Wight Festival.
69 or 70? 69?
69.
Yeah.
So what was this? Luke did some remastering. What was that?
What was the question?
About Luke, what did you have to do with this new remastered?
Yeah, so basically just last year I took this bootleg that came out in 1996 of the complete show, unedited, because even the official releases that have all of the songs from the concert, there's various edits here and there, either to remove sections of songs or to fix little things. Bootleg's unedited, but then like I say, the boot had balance issues, it had speed issues, it had alignment issues, it had the crackling from the original recording, it had some dropouts, and basically just fixed all that up and re-EQ'd it to kind of spruce it up a bit.
Well, because I just recently, a couple weeks ago, saw a flax on the Usenet group, lossless audio of leads, and it might have been some. Who knows? Maybe it was a thing you did. I don't know.
It could have been. Was there a bonus disc 3 with like audience recordings?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that's mine then.
Really? What how it got up there?
You said to distribute it at will as long as you include everything, right?
Yeah, I didn't put it there, but apparently somebody did, and I just in the notes I said, feel free to share it. Just make sure you include all the details.
Is there any conjecture about where the original bootleg came from?
That's one mystery that remains a mystery for me, at least. I know in terms of the mixes don't sound like any of the official releases, so it's not like, oh, well, they clearly mixed it when they did the box set and somebody snuck out a copy. I have no idea when it was mixed or why it was mixed, but obviously somebody did it before 1996.
I wonder if it came out of Pete Townsend's studio. His studio that he has down on the Thames used to get quite a lot of work when he wasn't around, and I just wonder if somebody done a little bit of he has quite a collection of master tapes and things in there, I know that. And I just wonder if it came out of there somewhere.
Yeah, I really don't know. I have a feeling the bootleg source was a cassette, but I'm not sure. It's pretty good, but there's a few things here and there that make it seem like it, was not 15 inches per second master tape.
Well, what was the original Live at Leeds? It was professionally, done right?
Yeah, you missed last week.
Oh, I guess I did. Was that recorded, guys?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I muted myself. Sorry, I was writing a letter to George Rellis about Hill Audio. Yeah, I recorded it. I'm in the middle of editing it. I hope I'm near the end of editing it, and I hope it'll be posted, and I'll send a link to it to this group by next week. That's my hope. I don't know though.
But the short answer is yes. It was 15 IPS, 8-track, NAB, and then mixed to quarter-inch stereo.
Wow, cool! This is great stuff. Stuff that you guys have, Gordon's, stuff, and this is great stuff. I love hearing all that.
Absolutely. And Gordon, what was Hill's first name?
Matt Hill.
Matt Hill. Thank you.
Yeah.
Went to school with the Matt Hill. So where are you at, Luke?
I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. You were in one of the meetings we had a few weeks ago. Where is Lou at?
Me? I'm in Olympia, Washington.
Oh, okay. And I've had you before on here. This is a great venue. I really like this venue for AES meeting.
I do too.
Works for me.
When you get the stereo stuff working good, you can hear stuff just fine. And I mean, and you don't have to. You got to bring your own drinks, refreshments, right? You don't have to worry about the actual venue. I think got to do. You can do more with it, and the kids can come. Lou's kids there, it's great. And the guys from Luke from Milwaukee, Gordon.
And you can't beat the commute.
Yeah. And the dress code.
That too.
Hey, I don't know if we'll have time next week, but or maybe some point in the future. Is there any interest in me talking about the house concerts I put on and record and things like that? Or?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, you can pencil it in for sometime in the future.
Yeah, great. And let's talk more about next week now. It sounds like, Gordon, if you want to talk about Matt Hill, that would be swell.
Yeah, because he was the guy that did Live Aid in the UK.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
That did Live Aid.
Yeah. I'm just getting ready to hit send to George Relis, who had it.
If he wants to come up with stuff for him, feel free.
Yeah.
He probably knows more about it than I do, to be honest. I just carried the damn things.
I don't know if you've ever talked to George or met him, but he is a very interesting guy and a very smart guy. And he's got a giant Meyer PA now and has always been a big sound company doing real audiophile type shows.
I got a phone call the other day from the guy. Remember I was telling him we sold a pile of MSL4s to Japan?
Yes.
Well, the guy who brokered that deal for Wigwam got in touch with me. They wanted me to know if I wanted to buy some MSL4s the other day.
Wow. And I should share with everybody that Gordon and I talked on the phone on Zoom a few times before we started doing this series, and he was telling me about his tours around Africa and Kazakhstan or somewhere in the Mongolia, with a big pile of MSL4s, and which are the Meyer horn-loaded boxes that are about 4 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall, and I have some of those too. So that was really fun listening to that. We're approaching 6 o'clock here, our time, and I'm thinking we should probably wrap it soon here. So let's firm up what next week is going to be. So Gordon,
I'll try and get some Hill stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And Janie is going to do your thing. Should we leave it at that? 2 things, and if you need to expand it.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of stuff with Hill that I can do.
Yeah.
He was a very, very, very prolific inventor, designer guy.
Okay.
Very like Charlie Watkins in many ways, but in a far bigger scale, huge scale, really, in some ways.
Yeah.
I love doing that stuff.
Great.